I'm gonna be honest. I know this contradicts a lot of what I've said about it before, but I kind of hate Tekken 8 now. I loved the game when it first dropped, but I've come to realize that the aggression is and always has been the worst aspect of it. Season 1 was no picnic as is, but I still stood by Tekken 8 for most of Season 1 because, while I did have issues with the overly aggressive gameplay, it was definitely still a functional and enjoyable experience overall. The only problem is just how brain dead the game is starting to feel, and to be honest, by the time I hit 200 hours, I just got kind of bored, and jumped ship before the inevitable disaster that was the start of Season 2. Obviously the game has gotten a bit better since then, but my interest has already been completely destroyed. I simply quit playing because I had other games I wanted to sink some time into. Maybe the game will get better with time, but truthfully, a lot of what is wrong with Tekken 8 is intrinsically built into its DNA. It's fun to learn, but frustrating and boring to play at a higher level. Things like chip damage, heat being plus on block, and the excessive amount of spammy bullshit just make this game a slog to get through. Either way, because I'm a contrarian, I decided to give Tekken 7 a shot. I had legacy knowledge already from my time learning 8, so I figured it would transition smoothly, and I came to find that not only does it translate perfectly, but that Tekken 7 actually feels so much better to play. I do think 8's aggression makes it more intense, because you can hit hard and fast, but that is not the feeling I go to Tekken for. If I wanted that, I would just play Dead or Alive, or Skullgirls. It was my first time actually learning a real fighting game that wasn't just Smash Bros, so I do have some attachment to Tekken 8, but there's very little it can offer that I can't just get from other better games. The problem is that Heat basically turns it into a brain-dead game of casino. When you're getting comboed, you have no way to break out of that combo. You just gotta wait until it's your turn, in which you either parry or you block. Guess wrong, and the combo keeps going. The thing is, Tekken 8 could be aggressive without being so cheap and spammy. Why not use Heat the way that Guilty Gear uses, like, Psych Burst, where you can use it as a means of getting out of a combo effectively? Why not have Heat be something you build up over time? I also don't understand why it needs to be a Power Crush move. That just makes it a cheap tool for turning the tides back towards your opponent. Plus, having Rage Art on top of that, it's just excessive. This game really feels shonen anime in the worst way possible. Chip damage needs to fucking go. There's literally no reason to have chip damage in a fucking fighting game unless it's, like, really tiny. Otherwise, blocking is totally fucking pointless. I love how they claim to fix the sidestep, only to nerf it even harder with other added mechanics. Needless to say, I'm pretty glad I jumped ship. It's clear I'm not missing out on anything special. Fighting games should be easy to learn, yes, but when you sacrifice clarity as a result of that, you completely alienate your fanbase. So, I decided that it was high time I gave Tekken 7 a proper shot, and I am very glad that I did. It had been collecting dust on my shelf for the past couple years, only for me to sell it in the end because I got a PC and realized I didn't need a PlayStation anymore. But since I didn't do the game justice, and since I refused to keep playing Tekken 8 because I no longer hate myself, I decided I would climb the ranks in its predecessor and see what I missed out on, and to tell you the truth, I regret not getting into this game properly while it still had an active scene. Now don't get me wrong, the online is far from dead. I can get matches pretty much whenever. I would be lying if I said the netcode wasn't a total shit show, with it randomly disconnecting every time I enter the lobby. But besides that problem, it's overall a fantastic experience that I could not recommend more. I think one of the most important things to establish is precisely why Tekken works so well to begin with. For me personally, it did feel like the culmination of everything I liked about fighting games all packaged into one. Every character has a unique fighting style rooted in real martial arts, but with a bizarre, exaggerated twist. Yet despite how absurd the game can get, it's like the perfect mixture of hilarious and badass. Huoreng uses Taekwondo, King is a pro wrestler, and Leroy uses Wing Chun. As is typical of fighting games, there's a consistent through line of diversity that makes everyone stand out in unique ways. It walks that fine line between Virtua Fighter's authentic realism and Dead or Alive's over-the-top absurdity. I do like both of those games, but when you combine them, it results in what is essentially my favorite 3D fighting game franchise ever made. Seeing a demon with laser eyes or a robot with chainsaws take on some dude with a dog is endearingly entertaining in a way that is so hard to put into words. But it isn't just that. Yes, every character has a completely different aesthetic that makes them stand out, but they also feel different. In most fighting games, I typically try out a character, and then I get bored of them about 50 hours in because I learned all the basic moves and tried out a variety of different combos, and I realized they weren't really for me, so I try out another character. But in Tekken, everyone has up to like 200 moves, sometimes even more than that. What that means is that Tekken is a game you can spend years studying and still not fully internalize. There will still be something new to learn. These games are also just visually appealing. From Tekken 3 leading all the way up to now, the aesthetic of the series has been absolutely stellar at blending this realistic style with cartoony absurdity in a very clean and interesting way. The stages are always so detailed and full of life, the music has always been banging, and the animation quality is very polished and cinematic. Each character's moveset is structured on a 4-button system: left punch, right punch, left kick, and right kick, with each button corresponding with your character's limbs. It is the typical structure of highs, mids, and lows that you see in other fighting games, but now it feels like you're puppeting a human body, making the combos feel more natural. You spend most of your time trying to juggle people with launchers into extended air combos, relying on wall splats or floor breaks, and putting a lot of thought into trying to keep the combo going, which gets progressively more challenging the longer the combo lasts. Some moves send the opponent into a tornado, while others only knock them to the ground slightly. The movement system is insanely dense, and because of that, Tekken has become known for being one of the sweatiest fighting games ever made. I was even warned that this was the hardest franchise to get into before I ever even touched it. It isn't just blocking or jumping. In fact, jumping is primarily useless in this game. You're weaving around obstacles, sidestepping, backdashing with attentiveness. I mean, just look at how hard it is to Korean backdash, much less cancel it. For most 3D fighting games, implementing a sidestep automatically adds a layer of depth to their gameplay that simply isn't possible in more traditional fighting games, but when you look at the sidestep in a game like Soul Calibur, it's a bit less satisfying and a tad slow. In that game, it's more about weapon range. But Tekken made the sidestep satisfying as fuck, to the point where it's a viable option for dodging certain moves, which is then compounded by characters having moves that track, adding yet another layer of communication and depth between opponents that opens up even more possibilities for mind games and counterplay. Between block punishing, counter hit launching, or baiting unsafe moves, I just feel like no other franchise does it in quite a way that feels as satisfying as Tekken. These are all foundational from the beginning of its inception, which I find to be much more satisfying than the triangle system in Dead or Alive. Although, I'll take anything in Dead or Alive over the ridiculous amount of 50-50s in Tekken 8. That's partially why I feel like Tekken 8 is so far from the mark. The appeal of these older games got lost in translation and moved towards a more brain-dead and simplistic style that I feel takes away from what makes this franchise awesome. It's why Tekken has been a mainstay at events like EVO or Tekken World Tour. It's a game that is both flashy and entertaining, but also insanely technical, and its popularity is almost unmatched when it comes to 3D fighters. Virtua Fighter is close, but still relatively niche. That is, unless the new one comes out and does okay. The rest of them are dead, and unfortunately I'm a bit scared that Tekken might join them, considering how much this game reminds me of Dead or Alive 6. One particular aspect of Tekken's gameplay I have to mention is the movement. I definitely think Tekken has the best sidestep out of all the 3D fighting games, because it feels more fluid and natural than them. Most other ones have sidesteps that are definitely fast, but feel stiff. In Tekken, they are a bit more slow, but the way it moves is satisfying. You also have forward walking and backdashing, but if you cancel your backdash with a crouch, you can backdash even faster. That is known as the Korean backdash, and it's very cool and swag. It's a very useful tool for creating distance in a timely manner. Since fighting games always require split-second decision-making, the Korean backdash serves as one of the most useful tools for competitive play. You can crouch, you can block, you can grab and throw your opponent, and you can also break throws when performed on you and vice versa. This obviously serves as a useful tool against people who like to turtle a bit too much, relying on blocks, but you're still given an option to escape being thrown if you pick up on it at just the right time and press the button associated with that specific grab. This is all pretty standard stuff for a fighting game. It's nothing you haven't already seen in other titles like Dead or Alive or Virtua Fighter. That being said, combos in Tekken are absolutely fire. It definitely isn't as bombastic as some other games that implement more aerial combos. Tekken is more grounded and weighty with its combat. Combos primarily revolve around launching and juggling your opponent. In your massive list of moves, some of them are launchers. These are moves that send your opponent flying into the air, giving you a brief second to hit them with a follow-up. From there, you can connect a series of moves together and keep the combo string going. I've always made the joke that Tekken characters get hit on their feet more than any other part of their body. It goes without saying, but Tekken's combos stand out among the rest. In many ways, it's both easier and harder than your typical fighting game. The inputs have a delay, and this can lead to some slight mashing here and there. It certainly isn't as precise as Street Fighter or Guilty Gear, but on the flip side of that, it's also densely packed. Just pressing buttons really won't get you anywhere, because each of these moves in this really long list have a different purpose. The move that starts the combo deals all of its base damage, and every subsequent hit afterwards progressively does less damage than if you were to perform that move normally. This is called damage scaling, and it plays a big role in your combo expression. You want to make sure that the weaker moves are at the beginning of the combo so that the stronger moves can still pack somewhat of a hefty punch. Some moves will keep your opponent on the ground with their feet up, and others will allow them a chance to escape. It's entirely your own responsibility to keep the combo going, and it's very easy to drop them. That's not the only reason Tekken can be a bit hard to get into. With every character having as many moves as they do, misinputs are very common. You're almost guaranteed to fuck up at least one combo because you put in a similar input to another move that you didn't intend, just because you got the timing off by just a hair. That is what I appreciate about Tekken. It's a bit easier for me to get into than other fighting games because of how simplistic the combo structure is, but it still takes skill and attention to detail, and it's incredibly cathartic in a challenging way. With each move, you're constantly thinking about frame data. How many frames is this move when performed on block? Whose turn is it when you both perform a move? Counter hits can be used to interpret an attack if you have one that is faster. If you happen to be just out of reach, sidestep, or duck under an attack, then you also want to think of which move can effectively punish them for whiffing. You're never helpless when you're getting comboed. If your opponent throws out a lot of low attacks, just as an example, you have the option of pressing down forward. If timed perfectly, it will automatically send your opponent to the ground, allowing you to either take advantage of them while they're vulnerable, or back up and get your bearings. The distinctive difference between 7 and 8 in terms of combo structure is that 8's combos overstay their welcome a bit much. It might be true that 7's defense being as good as it is means that sometimes players end up turtling a lot, but I would take that over chip damage any day. I don't like that some moves can break past your defense in Tekken 8. It makes blocking feel pointless, and blocking an intense combo is already a challenge in these games because you have to be able to predict which attacks are low and which are high. I think the best thing about Tekken 7 is that when you get comboed, you do have ways to get out of it. If someone is repeatedly hitting you on get up, you just need to find a different approach. That's partly why I quit Tekken 8, because it often felt like combos lasted forever, and when I finally do get some breathing room, it is a guessing game. Guessing is fine sometimes, but I do think Tekken 8 takes that way too far. I think too many moves in Tekken 8 are low risk, high reward, when the truth is that no move should be entirely safe. That's what creates the give and take dynamic. Every move is a tool, and these tools have different uses for different contexts, but when they're safe and rewarding, then why not just use that move repeatedly? That makes the game not fun. Getting relentlessly comboed with very few viable options to defend yourself or get out is not fun. There's a few other things that Tekken 7 brings to the table, which previous Tekken games did not. You have the Rage system, being the Rage Drive and Rage Art. The Rage Art is a special move you're given when close to death as a means of turning the tides back against your opponent, but you have to be able to hit them with it, otherwise it won't work, and it can be completely wasted. Most of them can be blocked or ducked under, but if you catch your opponent on hit stun, then you're guaranteed a free Rage Art finisher. A lot of people did not like this mechanic when it was first introduced, and I do think it can be a bit shitty to lose because they got their Rage Art. Almost feels like a free turnaround that took little effort, but because of the counterplay against this, I think it's fine. You also have Rage Drive, which uses up some regular attacks while in Rage, making them more powerful. I definitely find this mechanic to be a bit more egregious than the Rage Art, because now it means that you're stronger because you're almost dead. There's also the Power Crush, one of my personal favorites. This is basically a new panic tool when you're dealing with a lot of pressure. If you're backed into a corner and blocking is getting to be a bit difficult, hit them with one of these. It's basically a move with armor that cannot be interrupted unless they do a low. This allows you to return pressure back towards them. Of course, it takes a second to do, so if they catch you early enough, it will be cancelled, but once the move starts, there's no stopping it unless they trip you. Tekken 7's gameplay is easily some of the best the series has seen since 5. Having played Tekken 6, I feel like it improves on that game significantly. Sure, the movement is a bit weaker than Tekken 6 or Tag 2, but 6 also had really bad punishment. In Tekken 6, it often felt like getting up off the ground was impossible, almost like it does in 8. But in Tekken 7, the only reason you wouldn't be able to get up would be if you keep relying on the same get up option, in which case, that's entirely on you. I also really don't like that low parries in Tekken 6 eat up your bound. That just makes zero sense to me. It barely functions as a tool for turning the tides back on your opponent, it's just kind of there and pointless. Overall, Tekken 7's cathartic give-and-take dynamic is really profound. It definitely feels more intense and demanding than 6, but in a way that feels satisfyingly rewarding. I'm sure at some point I'll consider making an in-depth roster breakdown, but for the sake of brevity and keeping this video light, and also because I have yet to sink any time into any of the other characters, I'm going to exclusively talk about my main, and my change in experience playing her. Alisa is a high mobility fighter, and what makes her so viable is her agility. With her, there are a lot of pokes and jabs that slowly chip away at your opponent's health little by little as the game progresses. Alisa's movement is easily some of the best in the game. Her backdash is quick and responsive, and she has one of the better sidesteps. This makes her a slippery character, always moving about haphazardly and dodging with finesse. Many people really hate Alisa, and I get why, but to me she's just really fun to play. Part of it is just, she's adorable, but another part of it has to do with how satisfying her whiff punishments are. Alisa is the type to turtle and poke until her opponent begins overextending themselves out of frustration, allowing her to capitalize on her wide arsenal of launchers and lengthy combos. When she gets a chance to finally bring the heat, her pressure is staggeringly brutal, but she can't just do this willy-nilly because she's also a bit of a damage sponge. I think Alisa might be my favorite glass cannon fighter in any fighting game. She's a very high-risk, high-reward fighter. When you do get a chance to whiff punish, you're given a wide arsenal of tools to use. She has insanely satisfying jab strings that connect seamlessly. For example, down back 3 is a very good poke tool. Sure, it's a bit slow, but it's a very safe move that extends out a decent amount in front of her. Not to mention, it being slow helps it in a way because it gives Alisa a lot of leeway when punishing her opponents for the most minor of mistakes. In fact, she's one of the most punishing characters in the game, and many of her launchers are plus on block. Another good move is back 2, which also extends out a decent length to allow for more easy pokes while keeping your distance. Almost all of her jab strings are insanely good for punishment. One of her most useful moves is standing 4, which is a tracking launcher. Even after using it, she's still insanely slippery, and can sidestep any move if she happens to catch them while blocking or whiffing. Although it can typically be ducked underneath, however, it's not her only option for sidesteps. There's the down back 3 move I mentioned earlier, but another good one is forward 1+2. Another thing about Alisa I have to appreciate the most is her pressure game. This punch right here can be performed in 2 ways. One is a power crush, which elevates her forward, allowing her to both cancel her opponent's attacks and close the distance. This move was brain dead easy to do in 8, but it actually does take some effort in 7, being performed with back forward 2. But if you forego the power crush aspect of the punch and simply want to build pressure, you can do it faster with forward 2. It's much quicker and has more plus frames, and can hit very hard if they fail to block. This is all without even mentioning the best aspect of Alisa, her chainsaws. As if she wasn't already aggressive as hell, the chainsaws turn her into a glass cannon. They can be negated by landing even just a single hit, but she can also pull them back out just as quickly, and most of her combos transition into chainsaw stance. There are only a few moves you can perform, but you lose the capability of blocking far-range projectiles. Now instead of turtling, you actually want to close the distance between you and your opponent and hit them with a wide arsenal of moves that pack a hefty punch. From slower moves like back 2, to faster ones like high forward 1 or the low down 1. With each move hitting a different spot at different rates, the mix-ups are insane, and it can make life a living hell for your opponent if they don't know how to handle it. However, it also leaves you vulnerable if you whiff for even a second. Each of these moves are strictly context sensitive, like with down 2, which is insanely busted in 8, but here is a very overcommitted attack that can get you punished if they DI out of it, block it, or dodge it. But if you catch your opponent while they're up against the wall and have been knocked down, you can fuck them up with this move. Each attack is insanely strong, but also very overcommitted, leading you to become a damage sponge. Hence, glass cannon. This leads me to a lot of Alisa's weaknesses. Most of the time her mix-ups can be a bit difficult to pull off. Take one of her most OP moves, down 3. This has a variety of different follow-ups. You can either do down 3 and then 1, which leads to a quick mid-punch and a safe on block, but if you find that they duck a lot, you can then follow down 3 up with a second 3, but the problem is that it's not very quick. It might close the distance between you and your opponent, but it leaves you open for way too long. If they sidestep, you can follow up with 4, as it's a tracking move that sends them way high up in the sky, but we run into the same problem. It's just too slow, and they can easily punish you for using it. There's also 2, which launches a rocket in the air, but this is only really useful for people who forget how to block or try to backdash, but it's so intentionally deliberate and slow, there's no point. The fix for this, luckily, is that you get access to all of these moves by pressing down back 1, which allows you to throw them out unexpectedly. I think they function better as mix-ups when used that way, but this slight issue extends to a variety of different moves. It isn't just that they're slow, it's that they're risky. You miss a lot of your attacks because of how overcommitted they can be, and like I said, Alisa is a damage sponge. These stronger attacks are all very slow, so you spend most of the match whittling your opponent's health down bit by bit until you can find the right moment to utilize a more powerful attack. But the thing is, it's hard to look at these as flaws within Tekken 7. They're honestly pretty fair in terms of weakness. That's how you create a balanced character, one with insane strengths that can be really dangerous if you catch your opponent off guard, but that can equally leave you in perilous situations if you're not careful. That's depth. That's skill. That's putting thought into every decision you make. There's some other flaws too. Her only good and viable throw is the one where she gives you head. I generally don't bother with the other 2 because they seem super easy to break and are a bit too small and slow. Alisa is an example of a gimmick character that, in my opinion, is done correctly. That take is probably going to upset some people because it's obviously a strict bias on my part. I literally main her, but Tekken 8 has made me realize that Alisa in 7 is actually very balanced and well done. The fast-paced aggression in 8 means that all of the overcommitted attacks she can perform are now no longer such and are all indeed very safe. That plus the added chip damage makes her one of the strongest characters in Tekken 8. That's the distinct difference. If a character is going to have annoying gimmicks, then they need to be punishable. But she's not strong because she's good, she's strong because she's unfair and stupidly broken. Making characters exploitable only ruins them, and not only makes them obnoxious to play against, but incredibly boring. That's part of the problem. Almost every character in 8 has this exact issue. Now, I am going to be blunt, this game is not perfect at all. There are a lot of problems. I already mentioned the online being hot doo-doo feces, and I still stand by that sentiment because it's actually horrible. Sometimes it just denies me every potential match, claiming that there was a connection error when both of us have good internet. Like, yes, I'm sure some of them did genuinely turn me down, but when it's every match for an entire 20 minutes and it only stops happening after I close and reopen the game, I think it might be the game's fault. It can genuinely get unbearable sometimes. But in my opinion, the most egregious aspect of Tekken 7 is its balancing. I think the mechanics themselves are generally pretty solid. There are various moments where I think to myself, that was some horse shit. Maybe here and there we might have a bullshit spammy move that I can't do anything about, but that's inevitably going to happen with a gaming franchise this densely layered and complex. I think it's kind of disingenuous when people call really strong DLC characters pay to win, because that's not what the term means. Of course DLC characters are going to be extremely good. I don't have an issue with that. But when you look at characters like Noctis, Geese, and oh my fucking god, Leroy, it's clear that these characters aren't just good, they're unfairly good. Leroy had insanely strong tools that were also brain-dead easy to employ. Almost every move had safe frame data, huge reward, and very little risk. Like back 1+2 being a counter-hit launcher that is fast, safe, and gives you free combos. Nearly all of his moves are plus on block, meaning that in any exchange, it was always his turn. I mean, talk about stupid fucking frame data. That doesn't even take into account things like the auto parry, or the unreactable cane move, or how he could loop wall pressure like no other. Noctis, for some fucking reason, has a sword, and a very light one, meaning that he has massive hitboxes but also moves really fast, which allows him to whiff without being punished. His down forward 2 could launch from halfway across the screen, hit crush, and was safe on block. While he may not be as malicious as Leroy, this is an example of a character where the rules are bended for them. Tekken 7 is mostly about close-range poke matches and turtling, but Noctis completely bypasses that. He almost feels like a prelude to what Tekken 8 became, with his insane pressure and ability to just mash buttons and win. His combo execution was extremely beginner-friendly, with low execution floor and high reward. He could do 60+ damage juggles with almost no timing or precision, which made him dangerous even in day 1 hands. Like I said, it's corny to call these characters pay to win, but I kind of understand where that sentiment comes from. It definitely feels like it. Some people might complain about Akuma, but he is actually a very complex character. Like, yeah, he's insanely good, way too good, but he's also fundamentally difficult to master. You have to know what you're doing when you play him. Akuma's strengths came from complex FADC cancels, hit-confirmed jabs, precise spacing, and meter management. His most devastating combos required one-frame links, consistent crouch cancels, and precise input buffering. One misinput means death. Without execution mastery, Akuma is a mid-tier character with stubby normals and unsafe lows. Players like Arslan Ash, Super Akoma, or CBM showed how terrifying he could be, but average players can't replicate their performance. Most Akuma mains in online play died really fast due to a lack of execution. His strength did exist, no doubt, but it was gated by discipline, practice, and matchup study, which is a fair trade in a competitive sense. He is Fox-only, no items, final destination. The others that I just mentioned are Meta Knight from Brawl. But with Akuma, there comes another issue. Despite community complaints about his oppressive damage and vortex setups, early nerfs by Bandai Namco largely missed the mark, targeting surface-level properties like damage scaling or meter gain without addressing the true source of his power, his frame traps, EX cancel pressure, and FADC conversions. In fact, some patches actually buffed his consistency, inadvertently making his EX fireball confirms and FADC routes more stable, allowing high-level players to extract even more guaranteed damage from minor openings. Developers had also tweaked stuff like global mechanics that indirectly benefited Akuma's combo structure, giving him new kill routes or easier wall carry. Rather than curbing his dominance, the updates widened the gap between average players and execution monsters, turning Akuma into an even deadlier gatekeeper at high-level play, while maintaining his punishable weaknesses at low and mid tiers. The result was a character who remained technically demanding, but whose optimized potential did keep expanding with each patch, often in spite of attempted nerfs. And that exact issue is alive and well in Tekken 8, where repeated attempts to balance characters have amplified their strengths instead of curbing them. Much like Akuma in Tekken 7, characters like Reina, Devil Jin, or even June have repeatedly seen patches that smoothed out their rough edges without removing the core problems, leading to cleaner combos, safer pressure, and an obnoxious amount of 50-50 situations. Instead of addressing the underlying structural imbalance, like overly safe mix-ups, oppressive wall carry, or resource mechanics that reward aggressive casino, the dev team opts for light number tweaks that only empower players who already mastered these character systems. Why do they keep buffing characters that don't need buffs? Then there's global mechanic changes such as tweaks to heat or wall interactions, which frequently benefit top tiers on a disproportionate level, making it feel like the high tier meta gets even richer while low tier characters remain stagnant. It is a balancing philosophy that seems to reward optimization more than fairness. In conclusion, with Tekken 7, these problems were the exception, not the rule. Yes, the game did stumble in its later years, and yes, those issues felt like early tremors of what was coming, but at its core, Tekken 7 still stands as the last entry that truly honors the soul of the series. While Tekken 7 wasn't perfect, it remained a game that fundamentally rewarded skill, patience, and a deep understanding of its systems, even if some characters or mechanics occasionally disrupted that balance. Tekken 8, by contrast, feels like a step backwards. Cheap gimmicks, aggressive spam, and overly simplistic tools dominate the scene, lowering the skill ceiling and diluting the depth that longtime fans cherish. The game's easy-to-learn, hard-to-master promise is often hollow. Too many characters rely on autopilot strategies that punish defensive play rather than outsmarting opponents. In this way, Tekken 8 sacrifices the nuanced, thoughtful gameplay that made the series great, trading it for flashy, fast-paced combos that rewards button mashing over mastery. Ultimately, Tekken 7 is the last true bastion of what Tekken was meant to be, a fighting game where skill prevails even with its flaws.